Good morning, everyone, or whatever time of day it is when you watch this. So I wanted to do this video quickly because there's a few people asking on this platform and the other ones that we run about, are we safe going to X location? Is it safe to go here? And the answer is probably yes to all of those. Now, but there's varying degrees of safety and there's a varying degree of risk appetite, I guess. So just before we go on, guys, why am I doing this video? Well, for those of you who know, I'm ex-military. When I left the military, I went and I got my first job as a security advisor for British Embassy in Baghdad. So we advised all the British Embassy staff and all the EU delegation that were operating from the British Embassy in Baghdad. From there, I went to Ukraine, and I still go out there quite often to Ukraine, and we advise lots of NGOs, lots of government organisations, British Embassy out there, not the American, the Canadian, Australian, and I think I did some work with the Romanians out there. I'm not sure. I may or may not have. That may have not happened. Anyway, I've also done quite a lot of time as a country security manager in Syria. This was when it was, when it was really, really bad in Syria. So, I've been all around those regions. I've been in lots of really, dangerous places. And the reality is most places are safe as long as you understand the threat and you can identify it. So if you identify it, you can do something about it. It's like a boxer, the punch that you see never knocks you out. It's the one that you don't see. So one of the things then that we would do normally when somebody new comes into a country is something called a heat course, which would be, what's it stand for? Hostile Environment Awareness Training, I think. Yeah, HEAT, Hostile Environment Awareness Training. Now, this would normally be done in a safe location in the UK or in a base location if they were in the embassy. Now, the core elements of this would be threat identification and risk management. You would have kidnap, hostage, and I guess now you would fit into that prisoner of war. You would do landmines, unexploded ordnance, and again, now you would put, depending on your theatre, you would put drones in with that, because essentially a lot of these drones are flying unexploded ordnance. You would do land navigation and navigation. You would do conflict management, which is a good thing, that people need to do. Yeah, you do conflict management, first aid, you put first aid element in there, vehicle safety and communications. Now, what I just want to talk about quickly is a few of these that I think are really important if you live in the United Kingdom at the moment, because when these, we've already seen it on the streets of the United Kingdom, things getting really bad really quickly. You've got groups of young men running around the streets, you've got police with riot shields, buildings being set on fire, and things can and often do turn bad really, really quickly. And it's when there's no police presence that things turn bad a lot quicker. And as we've seen from my video yesterday, the police are at short supply. And, I think that the reality is it's probably going to get a lot worse before it gets better. So let's just talk about a few of these core elements, because obviously, we're not going to need all of these in, if you're just going to, going on holiday somewhere or for a few days in the United Kingdom. So risk assessment, what do we mean by risk assessment? We do these all the time. There's lots of online ones, and a military risk assessment is exactly the same as a civilian one. On one side, you will have your the likelihood of something happening. And then on the bottom, you will have the severity. Now, where these cross, obviously, that's what you say. So, for example, if the likelihood of something happening is high, but the outcome is low, then you don't worry about it. For example, if I'm washing my car, the likelihood of me knocking the bucket over is pretty high, but the severity of that is low because I'll just refill that bucket and it'll be absolutely fine. However, opposite end, if I'm going to go into the middle of a protest that's going to, that's turned really, really bad. So you turn up to a protest to film it or to record it, and it's gone bad, there's missiles being thrown and buildings are on fire, okay, what if I go and stand in the middle of that? The likelihood of me getting, hit on the head with something is high. And also the severity of that is relatively high because I've not got a helmet on. So we can kind of like, put these into context and, start to, what's the word I'm looking for? Identify that threat and then do something about it, put measures in place to deal with that. Now, that all goes to your own risk appetite. If you're a wild guy and you want to get in the middle of it and you're not bothered about bricks hitting you on your head, absolutely fine. If you're out there with your family, with your kids, don't even go near that situation. Just move as quickly as you can. Get away from it. Walk away, because people are not interested in you and your family. They're fixated on whatever it is they're protesting about, whatever it is they want to do. And if you're not standing out in the crowd, you'll be absolutely fine. Just walk away as quickly as you can. Now, the other thing I want to talk about quickly is navigation. Because navigation is one of those things we think, oh, we don't need to navigate. We've got SatNav or Google Maps or whatever we use. And that's fine, absolutely fine. But when you're trying to navigate down small streets, the way that mapping works, the way that the GPS signal works, or GPRS signal, whether you're using cell towers or a satellite, normally cell towers, but either way it works the same. They can't tell which direction you're going. They can only tell the direction you've been. So they can only make an analysis from the direction you've been, that you're moving this way. And when you stop, that messes everything up. So if you're moving slowly through these streets, it becomes very difficult to know whether it's this left and the next left. So what I'm getting at there is, you need to understand where you're going before you're going, and try and, look at it on a map before you even go there. Everybody can zoom in at those locations. And if you're having to go, and I don't know, guys, I'm making this up. If you're having to go somewhere through, back streets and back alleys, try and avoid them like the plague, because they're the places you can get trapped in. There was an incident in Northern Ireland that you get taught, where there's two soldiers. They drive down the wrong place. They're in, they come to there's a funeral and they get trapped in by people. They can't go anywhere because they're in these back streets. There's another incident that you've probably not heard of in Baghdad with a security team. Exactly the same. They drove down the wrong corner. The team vanished. They've never been seen again. You can only imagine what happened to them. So try and, when you're navigating to somewhere, even if it's a little bit of a longer route, try and stay on the main roads. So I mean an A road, a motorway, and try and stay on them as much as possible. Don't try and come off and do shortcuts, because these shortcuts usually go through housing estates. Housing estates have people. It's a lot, And again, something you're taught as a contractor, as a security advisor, speed is cover. That's not to say, you speed or go over the speed limit. That's to say it's harder to stop a vehicle traveling at 70 miles an hour than it is a vehicle traveling at 10 miles an hour, trying to navigate through some back street somewhere to get to a shortcut because you think it's going to save you 5 minutes off your journey. Try and do the long roads on the, on the main routes, on the main substantial roads, because it's a lot more difficult to stop vehicles moving on that. Conflict management. Now, when we talk about conflict management, we had the example I'll give you is when I used to work in Ukraine. I worked with an ex-Royal Marine, and he was an absolute. He was very aggressive, and he was not good for conflict management because he would just argue with everybody, honestly, and it was a nightmare. So what you would do is So if you do get into a conflict, the best way, and guys, I'm trying to condense this and keep it under 10 minutes, which is not likely. But if you are doing conflict management, what do we mean by that? Just the main thing I would tell you about conflict management is if you start an argument with somebody, or you see somebody in your group having an argument with somebody, talk about it in your group and say this, right? Okay, if somebody's having an argument, that person who is having the argument will move away, and somebody else will come in and try and get that point across, because then you've diffused that situation, because then those flares are not there. Those two people butting heads, I don't know, for whatever reason, there's 1,000 reasons you can think of, you know. But if these two people are arguing, they're going to start to become unreasonable. If you can say, hey, mate, just stand over there, and this guy moves away, and you can move in, and you can continue that argument, you can continue those points in a more articulate manner, then normally you'll defuse that situation. What we don't want is these two escalating, pushing, because that goes wrong. Okay, so in a nutshell, guys, conflict management, that's kind of what I would what I would advise. Just get somebody to move in and take that argument. And the final thing I want to talk about here, guys, is communications. Now, when I did this video, I wanted to do this video in the context that, you know, you're probably not going to have time for training. You're only going to have the kit and equipment that you're wearing, which is normal things that people carry. So your phone, I'm gonna guess that 95% of people carry their phone all the time. So with communications, and again, I'm trying to keep this video short. The main thing I find with communications is people's battery goes dead. Guys, honestly, I can't tell you how many times, somebody's come up to me and said, oh, Sean, my battery's gone dead. I'm like, dude, what do you want me to do? I mean, you're an adult. So the thing with that is, guys, all right, try and carry a spare charger. Try and carry, those battery banks. And also, discipline, all right? If your phone is down to like 20% or whatever, and you need your phone because you need to communicate with your kids or your family, stop using it for little games. Stop using it and scrolling whatever platforms you want. Unless you're watching one of my videos, of course, then that is essential. Now, I'm joking, guys, right? If your phone gets down to like 20% or something, just stop using it and have that for emergency calls only. And that's the reality of the situation, guys. I've tried to really, condense this video and keep it under 10 minutes, which I've drastically failed, guys, right? Threat identification, understand the threat, try and do a risk analysis and a threat assessment, look at your navigation options, try and stay on the main roads as best you can, and communications, make sure your phone's charged. And always, guys, right, if you see something that you don't like, large crowds, just walk away in the opposite direction. Walk purposefully, don't look back, don't look at your phone, don't look at your watch, just keep walking and you should be fine. Guys, that is it. I'm going to back to grid and I'll see you guys later.